I really want to just give a little bit more context to what, the discussion that has been had. In Naomi talked about how, amount of viciousness and the amount of legislation that came out of Texas. If you think about that, it is no surprise that Texas in the last 5 years has had the leading deaths of Black trans women. That's the state that has the most, number one. And so it is no surprise that coming out of this state that the most viciousness is coming. You feel what I'm saying? It's no surprise that those two, that because that is correlated. That viciousness, that rhetoric, it creates a culture of hate and violence that not only leads to me being tormented when I'm on the bus, being tormented when I'm in an Uber, being tormented when I'm at the mall, being tormented when I am just trying to live my life. If somebody knows that I'm trans, I get called what Dave Chappelle, one of them alphabet people, or one of them transformers, or da 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 da. It leads to the regular people thinking that they can disrespect me because the culture is disrespecting me. The culture is disenfranchising me. The culture is not seeing my humanity. It allows some crazy buffoon to be able to kill me without any remorse, and to think that they can say, "Oh, I thought that she was a real woman, but she didn't let me know that she was a man," when he actually knew that I was trans when he was in my inbox on the internet. It allows him to kill me without even thinking that he would get any kind of consequences. And so this is the atmosphere that we are creating that leads to deadly consequences for trans people, particularly Black, dark-skinned trans women. And so when you're thinking about it, it's not just, oh my God, there are people who are protected from these things, but there are actual consequences to this, where people are not living today because of this atmosphere that we are creating. So it's really important for us to get the real, not that we haven't talked about the real context, but really the deep consequences of these type of actions that these political people who are protected from this type of agenda. We look at Caitlyn Jenner's stupid self running around spreading what she is because she's her money and her whiteness and her history of white malehood has protected her from the actual real consequences of being a trans woman in this country that allows us to be murdered and killed without any kind of repercussions. So I really want to give context, because I'm a Black woman who actually has experienced this trans experience in being poor and not having the protections of parents or anything that can protect me from the hurts that's going to come with living this life. So I want to give that context as well. But to answer your question, I think that to give us hope, I'm, like I said in earlier on in this conversation, I'm a woman that has come into my power, that has come into my joy, my trans joy, that has come into a new place in my life when it comes to the woman that I am, and being a part of a community that loves me, that shows me every day that my life is valuable, shows me every day that I'm worth being listened to, my story is worth being told, and that has put me on the other side of the dark side of the trans experience. And so, what I would ask my sisters and my brothers and my siblings of trans experience, what will your legacy be? Like, understand that your story is important. You don't need to be a star. You don't need to, your existence is revolutionary on its own. Somebody cares. There's somebody who is coming into your, who is watching you from afar. You don't know how many times, even cisgender men has came into my inbox and said, you being who you are and standing in your place and standing strong actually taught me how to be a man, a responsible man, not because you mimic manhood, but because you mimic a human being standing in their truth. And now I can stand in mine and buck up against this man box that everybody try to put me in. This is a cisgender man that testified that to me. And so for me, I think we have to understand that our stories is important, and actually use the tools that we have to actually document when we come, like, New Age 2 would be like a YouTube, a podcast, or whatever. Use the tools that we have to be able to document your story, so that when somebody comes comes along 50 years from now or 100 years from now, they actually can hear it from your voice. I hate that I don't have as many interviews as we can about Marsha P. Johnson, as many interviews as we can about Stormy Daniels, as many interviews as we can about Audre Lorde, as many interviews as we can about Bayard Rustin, all these people who had a legacy. Lucy P. Henderson Hicks. There was literally, I found an archive of Texas where we just celebrated Juneteenth, and we had this big hoopla about Juneteenth. There was a slave that actually transitioned by the name of Lizzie Montgomery. I said Lizzie McGuire. Lizzie Montgomery. That transition when she found out when she found out that they were free. So think about that story. I didn't think about transness and slavery and how that intersected. And so that was an important story. I'm glad it wasn't erased. And I was glad that here now at 40, I can able to tell y'all that story. And how can we tell our stories and avoid it being whitewashed, avoid it being erased altogether? Using the tools. And lastly, I would say, build community. If you want that hope and you want a new way of thinking about something, I would say build a similarity-based connection with people instead of focusing on the differences, because a lot of times transness can be alienating. We can be telling these stories about woe is me and selling, especially now that the nonprofit industrial complex is making us money as activists and making us money as trans people. We actually can use this as a survival tool. It actually can be more, us selling our story can be more alienating, isolating, and make people feel that they have nothing in common with us just because we are trans. But actually, you actually do. How can I connect with people who have similar experience with me? How can I connect with Black women, Black cisgender women who affirm me and who understands that we are dating the same men that are killing us in intimate partner violence? And we can't get to the solution if we're not connecting with our similarities. You worried about you having a baby and you having a period? That's not going to save us. Even though I can't do those things, those differences is not going to save us from getting murdered by the men who are murdering us. It's our similarities. It's examining where the Venn diagram, where we have connections to in the middle. That is what's going to save us. That's how we're going to build community and build solutions that helps us both. So make sure that you are built. And even when it comes to race, when it comes to poor and class, wherever you are, where are the similarities? Where are the similarities that can make you connect with people and build community and make us find solutions? That is the hope. That is why I do what I do. That is the hope. And so that's what you have to do. Build your own legacy. Know that your legacy is worth it. Use the tools, whatever tools that we have, and actually look at what you have that is similar instead of focusing on what is different. So I'm gonna get off my soapbox. I think for me, for me, I'm constantly on the next level of past visibility. So visibility is absolutely important. We need to be able to see our people out here just to be beacons of light for somebody who is young and feeling alone and isolated, but also for people to relate to and hear about our stories. And a lot of times they're making up lies. And when we think about these legislations and the people who are testifying, they don't even know trans people. Like, they admittedly, I don't know trans people. and you're trying to make laws and rules to criminalize parents for supporting us, and you don't even know us. Get your ass out of here. So in my mind, I feel like that's ridiculous, but it can't stop at visibility. Like, it is beautiful for me to see shows like Pose. It is beautiful for me to see the documentary Disclosure. It is beautiful for me to see this new renaissance that happening when we talk about us gracing the covers of magazines and us being just in positions that we never have been before when it comes to trans visibility. In the past decade, I think it's beautiful. But if we're not giving the community, the non-celebrities and the non-stars, actual survival mechanisms to actually survive when I'm couch surfing, when I'm homeless, when I don't have, because we know that 40% of the LGBT youth, of youth are LGBT. And so if we're not giving them actually survival mechanisms to actually survive and kind of come out of under that kind of huge level of oppression when you don't have these kind of protections, we're not doing our job. Visibility is kind of mute and unimportant, so it has to come with the next level. And for me, in my particular organization and any work that I do, when it comes to my podcast, when it comes to Black Trans Women's Inc., I have an art initiative that I'm starting, that I started. For me, it's about getting to that next level. How can I create those survival mechanisms? And for me, my history in community activism, my organization is egregiously underfunded, but we only get influx in funding when one of the girls die. It's like, oh, let's just throw money at it and da 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 da, and hopefully they could fix it. And then I just go back about my business. And so when I'm trying to do something positive, when I'm trying to open up a home, when I'm doing this, it's like, oh, it's like almost silence. But as soon as somebody dies, it's like, oh, let's throw a check. And while I appreciate it, that helps us fund some things, but we should also be investing in Black trans joy. We should be investing in the beauty and the vibrancy of our community, not sharing just our trauma, but sharing our euphoria. Not just focus on our dysphoria, focus on our euphoria. What is bringing us joy in our lives? Because that also makes us, that also is a mechanism for us to see that we are worthy out here. We won't have to worry about suicide. And, it can give us things that can actually bring us even more joy. And that kind of joy reverberates. And I think that for me, it's just about making that content, making those tools that we can use to survive. And if that's happening, I feel like we can make an impact in the world as a whole, because we
I think Diamond is frozen. Is that just me or is it other people? Okay. Well, hopefully we'll get Diamond back.
we got it.
Maybe.
Can y'all
Oh,
hear
hi.
me?
Hi. Sorry about that.
It's okay. So basically, I was saying that if we do the solutions, we actually can. If we're the lead in deaths, we can be the lead in solutions. It can lead to other people mimicking what we do, to be able to reverberate that out, those solutions out to other parts of the country, other states, other parts of the globe, because we know this is a globe. Trans deaths are a global pandemic.
Yeah.
So, of course, my podcast, Marsha's Plate podcast, we're on all platforms. Marsha's Plate, we have been going for 4 years. I have tons of history from current activists, and of course, we feature history. C. Riley Snorton has a book called Racial History of Trans Identity that you can find anywhere. Also, Sex, Love, and Race, when it crossing boundaries in North American history is something that you can start. And actually, the late great Monica Roberts of Trans Griot, she has tons of history on her website. Check it out. Is Blogspot. I think it's Trans Griot. That's TransGriot.blogspot.com. That is her legacy. She was an amazing activist. She just passed away in October. She just has tons of, she did the work. This is her legacy. This is what she wanted us to do, pass the torch. And so you can learn so much there. And yeah, it's just, my podcast, books that I recommend, and Monica Roberts' legacy on Trans Griot. So that's where I think you should start.